Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Business Owners Strategy Forum. It's great to see everybody again today. We obviously been running this for 17 sessions, so it's been sort of into the long haul, and today's the 18th session, and we've really been focusing on, looking at how we can support business owners, not only through this difficult time at the moment that we face, but also coming out the other end and really thrive in business. And so what I've tended to do over the last 17 sessions is really focus on things that can sort of help us with information that we can then make better decisions in our businesses. And so we've had some great content over the last 17 sessions, and really it's about connecting, sharing, supporting, strategizing, and implementing. And so we've had some great topics covered, and last one was doing business in the United States, which was great, and thinking about high performance business mindset. Today, I've actually got Declan Ryan joining me, who is the Managing Director of DCA Australia, which is it's a really great sort of story in terms of what Declan's achieved in his career in terms from a business owner's perspective. And Declan's been a client of Prime's for many, many years. And we've watched his journey, over that period of time, and really been involved in business from sort of startup, scale up, sort of maturation sort of perspective, and then also exiting a number of businesses as well. And so I just thought it'd be really, really good to have a chat to Declan today, just to talk to him about sort of, his view of the world about business, and sort of, in a lot of regards, the success formula, because he has been pretty successful over the years. He probably won't talk too much about that in terms of, because he's a fairly humble man, but from the perspective of really getting a sense of some of the things we can learn from those journeys, so then we can implement ourselves in our businesses. I think it'd be great. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I'm going to introduce Declan. So Declan, thanks very much for joining us today. I really appreciate the time that you're giving to us, and looking forward to having a chat.
Oh, pleasure, Matt. I assume we're having a bit of a fireside chat here, and if you want to ask me some general questions, I'm happy to chat away, and you can take this in whatever direction you wish to take it. So, how much like it? Yeah, how would you like us to start?
I suppose maybe give us a little bit of information about sort of DCA, the company that is today, and then we'll sort of get into sort of the history of it and stuff like that. But just give us a bit of a snapshot of what your business currently looks like, and what you're sort of trying to achieve from a business perspective. Would be great.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with what I think are the three building blocks, or the people, the technology, and customers. We have around about 380 staff. We are really a multicultural team. We've got around about 23 nationalities represented through our workforce. Over 50% of our team are first generation Australians, and over 2/3, in fact, it's 3/4 or thereabouts of our team have one or more university degrees. So, and the average age is 32. So a young, highly educated, multicultural workforce, of which 50% are first generation. So there's a sort of, I'm going to call it an innate, lean and hungry, axiomatic approach to success. Technology, and I'll talk more about our business positioning, but essentially in technologies, we have a suite of data-driven solutions and expertise around data-driven exercises. So that can be providing financial institutions with either data insights or data support services for their key activities. We have a suite of smart city technologies. A lot of your viewers and listeners this morning would know of Paystay. We've also, in our smart cities technologies, have those terrible subterraneous sensors that alert parking enforcement officers to overstaying vehicles. We like to describe that as the gift that keeps on giving. And we have a higher education research management program, or research management piece of software, of which 1 in every 2 universities in Australia and New Zealand use our research management system as the backbone for their research management and management of all of their high degree research students. Sort of scope and scale, we have around just under 1 million PayStay users. We have just over 1 million, about 1.2 retail loyalty customers. We provide a lot of loyalty systems for retailers. Like I said, I think we've got about 50% or a little over of Australia and New Zealand universities, high degree universities using our system. And that, I think, represents around 54,000 researchers, predominantly PhD students, 50 significant large data service clients, and around about 250 customers, local government or state government customers in our cities division. So that's a kind of a scope and scale, Matthew. If you'd like, Matt, if you'd like, I'm happy to talk about, how we started. Or
yeah, that'd be great actually, because I mean, obviously, when you start to add up the numbers, like you just spoke about there's obviously a significant scale and structure to your organisation that you've built over a number of years, and so I think it's great when we go back in time to say, well, the start of the journey. What did the start of the journey look like? What motivated you to get into business, and when did you start? And
sure.
What was sort of the journey that you actually went on, and the story of Declan and DCA?
Sure. Yep. I'm happy to talk about that. And if this is getting to be a bit of an indulgence, Matt, at any time, pull the carpet from under me. So the business, Database Consultants Australia, commenced in 1993, thereabouts. I think it had a couple of years where it had 1 or 2 staff, but I think it sort of started more seriously in about 95. So what I call the adolescent years are really 95 to 2001, and the business transitioned from a lifestyle business to having a managed framework. The 2 founding principals built the business for a lifestyle, and I don't say that in any derogatory tone. It's what they wanted, and so one raced cars and the other built some very fine homes and properties, but it was built for their lifestyle. It grew from about 3 staff through to 93, 94, then through to about 45 staff by 2001. And there were some significant early, I'm going to call it, position statements we made, certainly in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And we determined that we wanted a portfolio of large corporate customers. So we always played out of our weight division in terms of the size of our business relative to the size of our customers. And it was important because we were at that point in time, really providing core data services. And if you weren't slicing and dicing large pools of data, you really were just working for practice. So our positioning early in the piece was we designed our business to cater for, to be able to manage and engage with large corporate customers. So that involved, for a small business, a lot of corporate governance, attracting and recruiting very senior and experienced people, and that's unusual for a small business. So by 2001, we had pretty well put in place, believe it or not, the management team that we have today, 20 years later.
Wow, that's amazing.
Our finance director is the same finance director. Our current network administration manager came from our client liaison office 20 years ago. Our group commercial services director was with the business 20 years ago. our human resource director. I recruited her to this business. I worked with her prior. She's been with me for a quarter of a century. A development of director, director of development, I should say. Steve's been along for the journey, and our head of the and co-director Sandy Del Papa has also been there for the journey. In fact, all of those folk I've mentioned started the business before I did. They all started about a year before I did, and I think my job was to gel all of those skills together and make develop a cohesive workforce and give it some direction. So that was the sort of 93 to 2001 years. And
I just wanted to pause you there for a second, because there's a bit in that. A couple of things that really strike me with regards to that is that you're a small business trying to do business with big businesses, and typically big businesses don't like to do business with small business because there's too much risk involved in it. Okay, and so therefore, what you did was set about getting the best people that would give large business comfort around the fact that they could do business with you successfully in a low risk environment. And so that would take investment. And so therefore investment is backing yourself at that particular point in time. So you must have had some significant confidence in your products and services to back yourself to then go and invest into the people to be able to take the business on the journey to the next level of attracting larger customers, which will then drive sort of a bigger performance in the organization. Would that be fair to say that that's, if you take yourself back to that point in time, that you actually had to, there was a couple of leaps of faith that you had to take?
Oh, well, absolutely, Matt. Look, I'm sure that every small business owner that's listened to this will be nodding their head when I say, when you have a small business, you drive to work every day, and you're going to roll the dice on your mortgage, or you're going to roll the dice on your assets. You continually need to take, and you continually have to take, big leaps of faith, big risks. That's the DNA of a small business owner, accepting risk, willing to take risk, and of course the skill is in how you manage that risk. We set about identifying that in order for us to be a successful business, we needed to have a portfolio of large corporate customers, and in order to have a portfolio of large corporate customers, we needed to have talent, and so really right from the outset, we were thinking about what we might like to look like 10 years from now, and what did we need to do today in order to give us a good chance of being the business we wanted to be 10 years out. Mm-hmm. That was sort of that's critical to our success. I think what successes we've had is really been around identifying opportunities early and driving the company and all our culture and our team driving towards those success pools. I'll talk a little bit more about the success pools and how we, how we went about that. But so that was the sort of I'm going to call it the 93 to 2001 years. And the way I would describe that, and the way we described when we talked when we talk to our workforces, that was sort of they were the adolescent years, a lot of self-focus and a fair amount of instability. Yeah. That's for all of us who've who either have or have had adolescent children. They're myopic and they're unstable.
It's funny, I do talk about business phases in that sort of type analogy as well, about being a child in the infancy of a business through to adolescence, which is very awkward and clunky. You sort of you're not big enough to be an adult, you're not small enough to be a child, so to speak, and then you hopefully get to that maturation of being an adult where you sort of capitalize on the effort that you put through as an adolescent. But I do like that description, because it does sort of when I introduce that description to people, they sort of get it and they go, yeah, actually, I do feel like I'm 13 or 14 or 15 where I feel a bit awkward, or I'm not too sure where I am or what I'm doing. And from that point of view, and when you sort of start to understand that, you then get some comfort in normalizing it, I suppose, for want of a better word.
Well, I think all that I brought to the business was, in those first 3, 4, 5 years, was I brought stability. I didn't want to dictate the focus. So I just wanted stability, and stability in the form of being able to provide an operation that delivered consistency. And the problem with a lack of self-focus, or the problem with, shall we say, being even overly self-focused and instability, is that you might do marvelous work on a Monday, and you might do terrible work Tuesday, Wednesday. Who knows what's going to happen Thursday? And if you're dealing with large corporate clients, or if that's your intention, instability will be your death. So I kind of had the job in that sort of 93 to 2001. And by the way, I didn't start in 93. I started about 98. I kind of had that first 3 years was really introducing stable building blocks. And so we moved on then. I think the 2002 to 2006 is our next sort of phase, and that would be what I would describe as our young adulthood phase. Mm-hmm. And this was really about identity exploration. You know, we could have so now we wanted to get targeted solutions for specific sectors, and it was really important for us. I'm sure you'll recall, because it's, you know, there's got to be 100 books written about this chap, and a number written by this chap, Jack Welch from GE.
Yeah.
He's had this sort of mantra about always only take positions in industry sectors where you can have a number 1 or number 2 position. Mm. Well, that was certainly our plan. Any solutions we had for any specific sectors, we only moved into them when we felt that we could take a number 1 or number 2 position. Now, there's a little bit more science to that, which I'm happy to sort of go into a little later if we have the time. But we were quite disciplined about that point. The other thing is sort of taking responsibilities for key customer outcomes. Mm. We were keen to have a portfolio of large customers, but as we sort of matured through that process, we came to the understanding that the only way large corporations will want to deal with much smaller companies, and you know, using that old adage, you know, when large corporations are competing against each other in market sectors, you know, when elephants dance, ants get crushed. So we needed to take responsibility for key customer outcomes. There was no point in simply providing a suite of services, particularly around what I'd call sweat services, just doing things that for a customer that if they really turn their mind to it, they could either do themselves, or they could write a contract and then have it tendered out, and we stand in a beauty parade amongst others for that work. That wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to build, you know, specific solutions for specific sectors, and then take responsibility for our key customer outcomes. You know, an example, sort of, you know, fast tracking through to 2020, for our local governments across Australia, New Zealand, they issue 200 of them issue $800 to $900 million of parking infringements annually. Mm-hmm. Our intellectual property and our support services would be responsible for $750 million of that.
Wow!
So it's taking responsibility. When you get a when you get a sticker on your windscreen, it better be the right offence at the right time for the right reasons, etc., etc. That's the outcome we deliver to our local government. It's not the only outcome, I might add, but yeah. That's just an example. And so this sort of period, 2002 to 2006, was about identity exploration, identifying where the opportunities might be, you know, in simple terms, fishing where the fish are, but understanding that we had to drive value for our customers. And of course, we were getting bigger then in terms of just the size of our workforce. By 2004, we had about 65 staff, and so one of the other key aspects of my role, which continues to be a key aspect of my role, is creating a facility and creating a culture that allows our people to grow and develop. And so we actually had to cater for that. We physically moved from Windsor to North Melbourne when we had 45 staff, and physically moved from North Melbourne to this huge office we thought at the time, around about 1,300 square metres. All 65 of us moved to West Melbourne. And I was thinking to myself, I could actually just have moved to half the size of this office, literally half the size. But we moved there, and there were much better physical facilities for our staff, but also we had better training facilities. We had more natural light. We had, we were creating a climate of ease for our staff to work, including being located right beside two trains. We could see how Melbourne was getting busier, and the options of driving to work were less available. So the concept of providing easy access to transport, all those sort of simple things, but if they seem to be, a lot of companies miss them.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. I had the same experience when, because we're both from Melbourne, that, moving from St Kilda Road to the city, to South Bank sort of type thing, for the very much similar reasons around sort of attraction and retention of the right people that would be able to take us to the next level of our organisation. So, yeah, certainly understand. But one thing that you've just also touched upon then is that, once again, probably around taking more space than what you actually needed, which shows that obviously you had some significant growth plans in your sites.
Yeah. The three owners of the business, who are executive directors of the business, we kind of have this. It's almost an unstated. Sorry, it's not almost an unstated. It is unstated, but we know that each of us want to have. We don't want to die wondering. Mm-hmm. We have a lean and hungry axiomatic approach. We have a continued hunger for growth and development. We want to pursue every opportunity that's reasonably attainable. We want to attain. That was our mindset back in 1998, and it's our mindset in 2020, and I'd like to think it'll be our mindset in 2025. It's nothing has changed. The next era is the sort of the 2007 through to 2018. It's these dates aren't specific, but they're just the general. So this was sort of much more about, this is a tailored focus, and this is about a sense of possibilities. We had sort of come through our young adult age or era, and we're into our emerging maturity. And so we had this sense of possibility. We had sort of broken any glass ceilings about the fear of having to compete with large corporations, and the fear of overseas technologies coming in and displacing us. In fact, we'd had for 10 years, we had been displacing a lot of international competitors. We were providing better technologies, better, faster, cheaper. So we had this sort of emerging maturity, and it wasn't arrogance, but there was a very strong sense of possibilities, and there still is. And so we were willing to make big investment decisions. We acquired a number of businesses, and we're still up for inorganic opportunities. In 2018, we acquired 10x Solutions Group. We acquired Market Base from Fairfax. we made several acquisitions, and they really are sort of bolt-ons to improve our core. But so this era, this last 10 years, has been about big investment decisions, genuine value-added initiatives, and we've sort of moved now. We were through the 93 period, through to about 2014, 15. We were very much business to business. And we've now expanded to provide a business to consumer service. So we can take on, 500,000 customers on behalf of, say, a large retailer and manage all of their loyalty programs, and not just manage it on the customer's behalf, but make recommendations to the customer about how they slice and dice data, how they offer different offerings to certain sectors of that of their consumer base. I mentioned briefly Paystay. We started that from Greenfields 6 years ago, and have attracted 1 million paying subscriber customers. So we've sort of, in this era, we've moved to business, from business to business, strictly to business to consumers. And this area is really, we've really, our emerging maturity has had us think much more strongly about creating tomorrow's opportunities. We're not naive enough to believe that the world is our oyster, but we've built a strong balance sheet. We have a capability at a corporate level to undertake due diligence, to manage our cash flows, to make big investment decisions. That was always part of our planning. We were thinking about those things at the turn of the century, 99 and 2000, and we put the building blocks in place, and now we're doing it. So I hope that gives you a bit of an insight into.
Yeah, no, it certainly does, and there's a lot in that to discuss. I want to touch upon a couple of things, but firstly, I'd like to touch upon sort of, Declan, the person, in terms of, the drive and the motivation, and to take it from, where it was back in sort of, the late 90s to where it is today. What's the driving force? What's the motivation? What's the purpose in terms of from Declan's perspective?
Yeah, I'll start, Matt, hopefully with a bit of humour, to say I thought this was a fireside chat. Now I'm lying on the couch. Where are we going with this, Matt?
No, it's all right. I just
look, I get a kick out of seeing people develop, and I get a kick out of constructing an idea, sharing it amongst a number of us, and putting definition around the idea, and then executing that into a market, and taking market share. I like doing those things. As I say, I get a kick out of it. It's an I think this is probably a true statement. 20 odd years later, I still skip into work every day. I mean, if I had the option of playing golf or going to work, believe me, I'd be playing work and I'd be working the golf. I find the golf hard work. Nothing much has changed. So I guess I'm doing what I do because I really like it. I feel, and I can't be absolutely certain about this, but I feel that's much the same for many of our people. We really don't have an issue about managing our staff to clock on and clock off and all of that sorts of Dickensian sort of issues, or early 70s industrial relations issues. That's not ours. We don't have those issues.
Which is obviously fantastic. So the reason I ask that question is because often the attitude and the motivation of obviously the leader of the organisation will then permeate through, and it usually gives us some clues around why you've been so successful in terms of retention of key management and team and executives in the organisation that have been with you for a long time, because that's also a significant difference in stat that you have in your business from what I see. And obviously, there's something in your DNA that's in their DNA that glues together, that continues on and continues to be successful, because stability in your team and especially your leaders can be a key critical factor in the success of an organisation.
Well, Matt, there were some red letter days. I can't actually put the dates on them precisely, but I suspect it certainly is early 2000s, 2001, 2002, when one of the red letter days we had, a great milestone we had, was that the directors of the business stopped being the sole responsible parties for BDM. We had a machine that was making calls and seeing customers and asking for orders and supporting our customers. Why I say that is, look, every small business wants to grow, and most achieve some growth. The real challenge is sustaining growth over a long term. And in my view, it can't be done without the right people. It makes it almost impossible to sustain momentum over time if you don't have the right people. So we have this sort of constant quest for talent. Now, we do have a very stable leadership team, but we also have recognized that sometimes, and again, I don't specify the exact period, but sometimes, perhaps every 3 to 5 years, we purposely seek new blood to refresh the talent pool. That doesn't mean that we move people out and move people in. It means that as we grow, we seek new talent, and one of the benefits of having some size to us now is that we can specify the type of talent that we're after. Sometimes we're after leaders who have, shall we say, a numerical aptitude. Sometimes we're looking for leaders who maybe their strength is marketing communications. Sometimes we're just looking for leaders whose real skill is around about organization development and talent development. So I think that, it's a bit like, I guess, I don't like to use the football analogies, because it quite often marginalizes half of the listeners. Yeah. The females are a lot less interested in this sort of football analogy. But in a team, there's a core, and then it's up to the core to bring in more and develop just strong leaders. So when I gave a leaders presentation 3 or 4 weeks ago on webinar, we invited 24 parties to our leadership presentation, and all of those parties play a significant role in developing the next 50 staff. Mm. And if you've got a team of, say, 370 odd, and you've got 75 singing from the same hymn book, with generally the same work ethic and a similar want or attitude, I think 75 can run a workforce of 750.
Yeah, they talk about the obviously the 10 times factor in regards to that. And so what in your early days did you do in terms of building infrastructure to create that culture and embed it and ensure that you were able to influence those people that then were able to influence so many more?
Yeah, well, the great bane for most small businesses inconsistent operational efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, there's no magic wand to this stuff, but you really need to embed a mindset within the workforce within the workplace and the workforce that makes people sensitive to costs and sensitive to the ways or to the opportunities to streamline processes. And it's communication, and, and as much, communicate to all stakeholders and connect the dots of opportunities. If we can improve our operational efficiencies, it will give us more time to do X, Y, Z. And what sort of perhaps needs to be, and I think it is understood, I'm probably stating the obvious, but stating it anyway, you shouldn't need top talent to deliver consistently high standards of service. What you need is processes and systems and people with the right attitude. What you want leaders for is you want leaders who are not afraid to face growth challenges head on. So essentially, in what did I do? Well, it's a matter of you get the right balance between those who get excited by developing processes and systems that's going to streamline the business. You need those folk; they're very important. And then you need a bunch of leaders that are just simply not afraid to face these, growth challenges or growth opportunities, facing competition, facing whatever challenges that we need to overcome in order to grow our business. So it's putting the team together. And truthfully, if you just had 3 staff, you're going to have one who's focused on ensuring that you've got a stable process in which to deliver whatever it is you're delivering, goods or services. You're going to have one who's going to have to, shall we say, count the cash and make sure that you're viable. And then you're going to have one that's got half their time focused on tomorrow's opportunities. Well, that's 3. Well, then if you've got 30, you've got a similar mix, and that's the way we've gone about it. I suppose that there's no magic formula, but really, I think too many business leaders that I meet and that I talk to, they think only about the here and now. Yeah. And I see my prime responsibility, and I've seen it right from the outset, is to focus on positioning the business for future sustainable growth. For many, many small businesses, it seems to be, it's such a challenge for them to see past the urgent in order to attend to the important.
It's probably a good point to make, and it's probably a question I'd like to unpack too, because right now we've got a lot of uncertainty at the moment, and and what are the plans for you guys for the next 5 years? Where are you heading? What are you doing? What do you want to achieve? And probably also I'd like to talk about your role as a business owner and the in that sort of framework and decision making as well.
Yeah, well, this COVID-19 issue has essentially come from the blue, and it's going to throw us about. We are impacted by COVID, like most other businesses. And if we're not impacted directly, or if we take some sort of consolation that maybe our business isn't too badly impacted, within the ecosystem in which we operate, because we all operate within ecosystems, well, the ecosystem broadly has been affected. So it's only a matter of time before we become affected. I was almost going to say infected. There's so many infections going around, but before we become impacted. So our view on COVID-19, we got in early, very early, almost in the first week, and we went to our major customers, and a number of our customers had I'm going to call it variable contracts that was based on numbers of transactions. We went early to those organizations, knowing full well that their transaction volumes were going to go through the floor. and we renegotiated contracts. We maintained the contract we had, but we said, but for the next 6 months, and we changed the contract for the next 6 months. We essentially took a hit in our profits purposely, but we sustained a collar. So we lost the opportunity of having uncapped, but we got a collar. And what the customer got was a guaranteed level of service for the period of COVID, but more importantly, beyond the period of COVID. Now, our message wasn't as clean as, if you want us to be here after this COVID thing, you better do a deal with us. That's not where we were going. But that was, that was part of our thinking. We said, well, we better get the caravans in a circle, and we better do as much as we possibly can to ensure that we're the same business coming out of this as we went into it.
So that's a really important decision, and it's a decision that I've seen that businesses that get on the front foot in times like uncertainty are usually the ones that do most well. Was that a conscious decision that you made, that as soon as you went into this, you go, right, I need to get on the front foot and I need to actually, batten down the hatches or get some certainty in our business model? Is that something that you sort of created from your thought process?
Well, one of the attributes of being in the technology industry is that there's a view, I don't necessarily share it completely, but there is a view that in the technology sector, things change at the blink of an eye. I'm not sure, as I say, I share that, but every 2 or 3 years, we declare within our business that our industry is going through the biggest shift ever. And in reality, the only constant in our sector, technology, IT sector, is change. So COVID was a much, could have delivered a much bigger change than we are used to. But in our industry, change is a very common occurrence. Not as big as COVID, but change. So we had I'm going to call it an underlying mindset or we have an underlying mindset that when there's change, we need to go in there, look at the change, and position ourselves best to take advantage of the change. Now, normally we're looking to take advantage of the change. In this circumstance, we were looking to minimize whatever damage was going to come out of this COVID change. Mm-hmm. So I can't speak for other sectors, but I am saying that if you're in a sector where there's constant change, then it should not have been too difficult for you to shift to address this change. Yeah. But of course, I fully accept that this change is a very, very significant change. Hopefully, we're all hoping it's a change that's not going to sustain itself much beyond 6 or 9 months.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And I think that probably part of the DNA of your organisation is to cope with change, and that's really what you've sort of always instilled in the business because of the industry you're in, which has obviously allowed you to get on the front foot and deal with the change in an easier way than some organisations that maybe don't have that sort of lens and DNA when it comes to dealing with change.
Yeah, just change management's in our DNA. But the other part that's really important is we know that if we're going to sustain ourselves long term, that it's impossible to have a sustainable long-term business, sustainable growth business, without delivering a value to the client. Mm-hmm. And so when COVID came along, we thought, I'll be nice about it. Oh, dearie me, here's another big change. But we looked at it through the eyes of, we're part of an ecosystem. How do we deliver value to our client through this change process? Yeah. One of the values we delivered to the client was consistency. We will be able to service you right through this COVID issue for as long as it takes. But in order to do so, we're seeking this change. And that's how we went about it. And most of our clients understood that, we had the brownie points. A lot of our systems are essentially ERPs. They're the backbone of how our customer operates. they did not need a circumstance in which they might come out of this and find that we're not around. So, you know, we're very pleased with our customer response and what we've done to date.
Yeah, and I think you make a very valid point on the points you made about, you know, taking sort of a number one or number two position in an industry shows that you want to be known as having a competitive advantage and being the expert, so to speak. And then also, you know, that means delivering a high value proposition to the market in which you sell to. And I think obviously that's what you focus strongly on as well, which then also creates that value and certainty. And then the customers obviously want you guys to succeed too, and that's why they're happy to commit and invest back with you guys. And so going on the front foot and giving that certainty is obviously a smart strategy around coming into this time uncertain period that we've got.
Yeah,
which makes a huge amount of sense. So in terms of, you know, next 5 years, you're sort of saying that, you know, you've got to continually evolve, you've got to continually develop and that sort of type of stuff. Do you have a framework in which you do that? You spoke about that there's this disruption mentality that you have every 3 or 4 years. You say, look, you know, we've got to assume that there's going to be big technology shifts that are going to change it. So so right now, have you got that sort of framework or that lens for what the next 5 years looks like?
Well, yes, I'll tell you how we go about it. It's to be perfectly frank, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
What we start with is we look for the emerging trends and influences in our sector, and when we look at emerging trends and influences, we don't actually think about that in terms of competitor context. This is really about technologies or capabilities or enablers that are coming to our sector. So without going through in any particular order, so such things as artificial intelligence being provided in a software as a service, being provided through software as a service. So this sort of, you know, this is really, there's some really interesting stuff happening there. And so much of those applications are being provided by, you know, the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsoft, the big end of town. But over the coming years, and I'm not talking decades, I'm talking a small number of years, there's going to be we'll see a wider adoption and a growing pool of providers. And where that's heading is, it's likely that not only will artificial intelligence be provided as a software as a service, but more tailored applications and services for specific or specialized tasks will be included in that service. And that's where we come into it. We think that we can offer tailored applications and services around an AI service for our customers. So that's an example, but there's, you know, the 5G data network, the increased bandwidth it's going to enable machines and robots and autonomous vehicles to collect and transfer data more easily. It's going to lead to advances in the Internet of Things and IoT and in smart machinery. You know, they're very, very interesting opportunities for us, because in some of those things, we're at the leading edge now. Our sensors and our ability to, you know, even say City of Melbourne or in around Melbourne, we've probably got 15,000 car parking spaces that we can actually provide our municipalities with recency, frequency, monetary value of every one of those assets. We can provide sensitivity analysis. We can do such things as identify parties who may have parked there who may be recalcitrant, either to police or recalcitrant to, you know, they haven't paid their bills or whatever else. The sort of things we can do with 5G data networks is really very interesting. We sold a health business, Matthew, back in 2014. That was a leading edge e-health business. We sold that to Telstra. And whilst we don't regret it, well, we do see personalized and predictive medicine as something that's really going to step up in the next 5 to 10 years. Personal health diagnostics through smart sanitation technologies. We think computer vision is going to be really big. Be able to identify items, places, objects. whether they're collected by a camera or a sensor. And, you know, we're really into sensors and cameras, and we see fantastic applications for those things. We think blockchain is going to become just more and more a sort of key part of any sort of digital ledger, and so any form of recording of transactions. You know, I in terms of where do I see the next sort of period for our business, the first thing we do is we look at the emerging trends and influences. Then we look at the strength of the business to capitalize on those. And we look at strengths of businesses in terms of the inside strength and the outside strength. You know, things like, you know, do we need to sort of redefine or define our goals and our missions? If we're going to move into some of these growth opportunities that we identify, these emerging opportunities, do we have the people, best people for that, for those tasks? Do we have to retrain our team? If we look at those sorts of opportunities, how do they relate to our capability to fund them? Can we make a profit out of them? You know, how would we generate cash from them? Those sorts of. So first of all, we look for the emerging opportunities, and then we look at what initiatives. How do they relate to our capabilities, or how would we need to change our capabilities to really capitalize on them? And then we look at them in terms of the context of I guess threats. You know, is this going to affect our current market share? What will our existing clients think about these new services in the context of our relationship? You know, who else could possibly exploit these opportunities to our detriment? You know, they're the sort of things that we sit around and more often than not informally discuss these. I might bounce these issues past 6 or 8 or 10 people, and then those 6 or 8 might then share that with 4 or 5 of their key personnel in their group, and we arrive at some form of a view. And as I said, going back to our 2008 to 2020 position, we're not afraid to make big investment decisions. So we'll arrive at the view, and we'll invest early. And because we're a private company, we'll invest early. And if it takes 3 to 5 years of trial and error to get it right, well, that's fine. That still puts us at the forefront. That still gives our customers best value, and it delivers, I'm going to call it, opportunities and interest to our workforce.
So on that particular journey, that when you sort of make a decision to invest into something, do you go through then rigorous test and measure for a period of time? And have you sort of stopped things because of the fact that it didn't actually pan out the way that you thought it was going to pan out? Or is it pretty much you just are relentless until, because you're backing yourself constantly around, you know, that decision-making process is right? It's just finding the right strategy to get there.
Oh no, like all companies, we've made plenty of mistakes. There's sort of 3 big ones come to mind. We took a business to North America when we were immature and our products were immature, and we needed a balance sheet, you know, 4 or 5 times larger than we had to really make a dent in the North American market. We won a few clients, but that was by and large unsuccessful. We built a residential care management system for aged care nursing homes. It was a great system, but then so was the other 2 or 3 that was already in the market. Right. Our chances of ever getting to a number 1 or number 2 in that market, we had to measure that in decades, not in years. So that wasn't for us. So yeah, we've made our mistakes, and I'm quite introspective when I criticize. I think we've made our mistakes and probably didn't learn from them quickly enough. Yeah, we we made our mistakes, we took our losses, and we were smart enough to close it up and recognize it was a mistake. But in balance, the benefit of hindsight, we probably shouldn't have made some of those decisions. And if we did, we probably should have realized that they were mistakes earlier.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's good to hear that in some regards, that you've been very successful, but obviously it's come at certain decisions haven't been as successful as others. And I think you're right. Every business goes through it, and I talk about business in terms of test and measure all the time. You come up with a strategy and then you test and measure that and make decisions as quickly as you can based on the data that you've got to ensure that you don't burn too much of investment if it's not going to get the return that you need moving forward. And obviously you've done that over that journey, which is good to know. We've got just a couple of minutes left. I was just going to sort of, focus on once again, you as an individual sort of thing, as the sort of the business leader, what's the best or worst part about your role and your job? It sounds like you do love it and you enjoy it, and which is, part of our DNA and why we exist. But, there's probably elements that, we all don't love about it.
Well, what I find the most challenging is making the 51-49 judgment call, particularly when they involve people.
Yeah.
If it's money, it's just money. But if it's people, then that's a difficult one. And the 51-49 judgment calls ends up on my desk. That's just the way it is. That's part of that's not the nice part of the role. And the other one is more of a frustration, but it's certainly a challenge, making a judgment call in the absence of data.
Yeah.
So, is it really a judgment call or is it a wild guess? So they're the sort of, I'm going to call it, they're the two challenges and bugbears. I'm sure, Matt, there are others, but I think there's always a frustration when, and in my first meeting with the management team, within a week of when I started the business, somebody asked me, what do you really hate? When you're having to work with people, what's your pet hate? And I said at the time, and I know it was my current group commercial services director who asked the question of me, and she said, what do you really hate? And I said, I hate when misery runs around looking for a companion. And so 20 years later, that's a pet hate of mine still. Misery looking for a companion. If you have somebody who's instinctively, or shall we say, innately negative, and they're wanting to share that negativity about whatever it is, whether it's the weather or an important matter or a company threat or whatever else, I don't have time for that negativity, particularly when it's baseless.
Yeah, understand. And I think that we all would agree with that in terms of, it takes optimism and to run an organisation, realistic optimism to run an organisation, and you don't need people to be trying to destroy that. So I 100% agree with that. Just maybe some final parting words that we haven't really covered across in terms of advice that you give to business owners, given the fact that you've been through such a long journey, and a successful one. Is there sort of any silver bullets, or the thing that you'd be known for, or the one thing that we all sort of have in our armory?
Look, I'm sorry, it sounds just like it's just a simple cliche, but I really mean it. You've got to ask yourself, do you enjoy being a small business owner? Do you enjoy being in small business? If the answer isn't instinctively yes, maybe you shouldn't be in the business.
Yeah.
I just think enjoyment's just critical to how you operate, how successful you're going to be. And if you're not enjoying it, don't be in it. And if you're enjoying it, good luck to you, you're doing the right thing.
It's great sound advice, and it's advice that I probably help many business owners with, as you know, in terms of making sure they're connected to their business and their purpose, and it is an enjoyable process, and that's why we talk about, you know, programs like Business by Design to get you back in control of the business, so it's not controlling you, so it is more enjoyable. So 100% agree with that. And Declan, it's been great. I could spend the next, you know, rest of the day speaking to you, because you're a wealth of knowledge and information, and I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to speak to me and our listeners as well. You know, there's lots in that, and I think we can all take something away from that in terms of reflection about our own businesses and what we're doing and where we're going. So really appreciate your time today, Declan.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure. Thank you.
No worries. And appreciate everybody listening. And obviously we record these so people can listen to them afterwards. And we have a library full of these now. We've got sort of 18 of these sessions that we've got on our website, that if people want to go back or listen to previous versions, or, you know, even send them out to other people that might be of benefit, please do so and share them, because we get enjoyment out of bringing them to you, and we know that we're getting some great feedback and information for people to appreciate the fact that we do this for our community, because we love business, and we've got a vested interest in ensuring that the economy continues to thrive, and the small business community represents 47% of the GDP. So we really want to make sure that we're, you know, supporting that. And we appreciate people like Declan that come and join us and share their thoughts and their stories. So look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. We're obviously doing these now fortnightly, so we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.